How do you measure success? That's what we're going to dive into today in another episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband. We're going to go through Nahum chapter 1 through 3, and tomorrow we're going to go through 2 Kings chapter 22 and 23, and also 2 Chronicles chapter 34 and 35. So, here we are in the book of Nahum. Now, this is written by Nahum the Elkoshite, as it says here in verse 1. And this was probably written around 650 BC. Now, different Bibles say different things about when this is written, but it's pretty close in each one. For instance, the New King James, most of those versions say before 612 BC. And there's a reason for that, because around 615 to 612 BC, we know for a fact, historically, that Assyrian cities were annihilated. At least 4 big major ones, if not all of them, were annihilated. And that included the town of Nineveh that is talked about here in this chapter. In this book, the book of Nahum. So overall, Nahum here, he prophesies that God would destroy Nineveh. And this was the capital city of the Assyrian Empire because of its wickedness and its violence. And it would never rise again. Now, pretty much everything he says here comes true. Now, the book of Nahum may conveniently be divided into 3 sections. The first section is Nineveh's destruction decreed, which is chapter 1. The next section is Nineveh's destruction described, which is chapter 2. And then, of course, Nineveh's destruction deserved, which is chapter 3. And those are the themes of each of those chapters. Now, Nineveh escaped God's judgment when the people repented at the preaching of Jonah. But no such outcome is going to happen again, as we're going to see. In chapter 1, the Lord is portrayed as a divine warrior, vanquishing the wicked. In chapter 2, Nahum is transported in a vision to Nineveh's watchtower, where he witnessed the combined armies of the Babylonians and the Medes attacking, invading, and sacking the city. And then chapter 3 begins with kind of a lament of sorts, where before there was no end to the amounts of treasure, and there was abundance of every precious thing, as we read about in chapter 2, verse 9. Now, in chapter 3, there were dead bodies without end. Like other great ancient cities that trusted in their fortifications, the Lord reduced the once proud city to the ash heap of history. Now, a little food for thought about the readings tonight. The first 8 verses are essentially a victory hymn to the Lord, and several of these verses are quoted often. But one thing that I really thought stood out to me was the achievement of this town and how amazingly high-tech it was for the time period. Human beings, we can achieve a great deal of stuff apart from God, can't we? We can achieve all kinds of stuff. And the Assyrian civilization was no different. Of course, Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire. And they were a very highly advanced city, economically and militarily. They were successful by all kinds of worldly measurements and worldly standings. But nevertheless, the Assyrians were a cruel and evil people, and thus, to God, they were an abomination. So Nahum shows us this. Nahum shows us that God does not recognize as great or good any person or nation that measures success apart from obedience to Him. So my question for the day is that, how do you measure success? Do we measure it as the way the Assyrians measured it? By economic gain? By military greatness and might? How do you measure success? I hope this has touched you. If it has, click that like button, the subscribe button, the follow button, and of course hit that little boxing glove so you can rumble with me if you're following me on Rumble. And I hope to see you again for another episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband tomorrow. We will see you then.